Let's do this. A lot of people think that a PDF is an ePub, and a PDF is the furthest thing that you could possibly get from an ePub. It's a digital document, but I think, yeah, let me just go straight in and share my screen, and we'll go straight through why a PDF is not an ePub, and then I'm going to be showing you how to generate and how to make your own ePubs that you can share with anybody, irrespective of the platform that you're using. Let's have a look at a typical word processing document. I'm going to look at, let's have a look at this one. Okay, so here's a typical document. And if I was to generate a PDF of this, if I could go say file, print, and make a PDF of it, we now have a document that is absolutely has complete fidelity with the original document. And the reason why PDFs were created was back in the mid-90s, when desktop publishing was becoming very popular and very prevalent. The challenge a lot of organizations had was if you were a design company and you wanted to share a document with the people you were creating the document for, either the people at the other end you had to either print it out, perhaps you would want to share it with other people, but the software that you made the document with was incredibly expensive. Quark Express used to start about 20,000 Rand, and this is back 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And if you gave them the original document, they could edit it. So Adobe came up with a format where you could generate a digital document that had complete fidelity with the original, but the person that you were sending the file to didn't have to have the program that created it. They could be pretty much guaranteed that what they saw on the screen would be what it would look like when it was printed. And that was what it was there for. It was to give you complete fidelity with the original document. And as you can see, these two documents look identical. Now, time moved on. We had the internet came up, and we had the ability to generate websites where people could view stuff on the web, but maybe you wanted to increase the font size. It was a little difficult to read. Maybe you wanted to decrease the font size. You wanted to get more on a page. And the ability to publish information which people had a certain element of control about how it appeared on their screen became the norm. Then the Worldwide Consortium came up with this concept of an ePub. Now, ePub is actually a standard. If I open up my web browser, you'll see over here we have ePub 3.2 is the current standard. And it is a universal standard where you can see what the specifications are, et cetera, reading systems, publications. And if you generate an ePub that conforms to the ePub standard, and the ePub reader that somebody uses, whether it's on Linux, Mac, or on an iPad, or on a Macintosh or Windows, the document should look the same. And so what we're going to look at is how to generate these ePubs and what the differences are, because there are a number of different types of ePubs that you can do. Before we get into that, I quickly want to talk about iBooks Author. iBooks Author was an attempt by Apple to extend the ePub format. Now it's still available, but Apple has stopped creating support for it, and I don't know whether you can download it anymore, but if you've got a copy, it's supported until it becomes unsupported. The thing about iBooks Author was it allowed you to make ePubs that had extended attributes. So if you look down here at the bottom, we could create traditional ePubs that could be read on any type of ePub reader if the reader conformed to the formatting of ePub 3.2. But Apple put some extended attributes in there. And if we open up a document like this, this is what it looked like. It was a cross between Pages and Keynote. You could add additional pages. You could, let's add a couple of pages inside here. You could add multiple pages. You could take some text. If I was to take, let's take this text. I'm going to copy that and then just paste it into here. And you'll see this document will automatically reflow with the text that I've pasted it in. Now, what made this fairly unique, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but what this made it fairly unique was, while a normal ePub, you can insert videos, you can insert audio, you can insert images, what iBooks Author allowed you to do was to do review quizzes, you could insert keynotes, presentations, and if it had hyperlinks built in, you could run it as a presentation, you can make interactive images, you could display 3D objects, and you could extend it with HTML if you could code. So this was absolutely fantastic. Some of the books that came out were beautiful, but nobody else took the bait and went further. So Apple have decided to hold back on trying to extend the ePub format and have made it possible for us to generate our own ePubs using Pages. So I'm going to quit iBooks Author here, and let's go into Pages. So if I wanted to make a new ePub, if I was to say new from template chooser, down over here we've got books, and we've got, these books are typically just normal layouts. If I open this up, it will be a normal document, but when you export it as ePub, it's kind of designed for that. So we've got books that are in portrait mode, we've got books that can be created in landscape mode. And when it comes to making ePubs, there's pretty much two types of ePubs. There's what's called a fixed layout ePub, and most of these are designed around fixed layout, the ones that are in landscape mode, whereas the ones in portrait mode are pretty much what are called reflowable format. And we're going to have a look at both of them. So if I was to open up, say, this template, you'll see over here, those of you who attended our original Pages workshops, you'll know that Pages supports two types of documents. It supports a traditional word processing document, where as you start to add additional text, the pages automatically are added. Whereas you've also got what's called, there you go, you can convert this to word processing. Whereas you've also got page layout, where if you want to make a new page, you literally have to add a new page. And like Keynote, you get a variety of different predefined pages, which you can just pop inside there. Now, if I wanted to start to add text to this, I could do that. The same text I've got here, I've got my placeholders. So I'm going to select this text and I'm going to paste it in here. Now, if I go to page 2, you'll see that the text hasn't flowed through automatically the way it did with the iBooks Author. Now, with page layout format, you can select these documents, these text boxes, and if I click on this little white spot over here, this, oh, sorry, let's make this the first one. Should have started here. This is now my first text box. If I click on over here, you can see the text, instead of having that lorem ipsum text, which is just your placeholder text, has now reflowed and the document is now continuing. So let's add another couple of pages. Let's just take straight pages over here. I'll add 2. And if I go to this, let's see that one, yep, let's go to here. If I click on the link over here, you'll see this is now page 3 or link 3. This is now text box 4. And you can see how the document is starting to flow. The text is now flowing through. So over here, going awry, his inability to, just delete that, adjust to what was happening. So this document reflows. And if I was to add any additional text over here, you'll see that the text flows all the way through to the next document. So this is a fixed format document. And what I'm going to do now here, you've seen me make one. I'm going to delete this one, and I'm just going to open one that I created earlier. So now I've taken this document and I've flowed it through. The image placeholders that you saw have been changed and added. I've added my own images to this document. Once again, I've added my own images to this document. I'll put some text here. This is an expensive doohickey. Okay. And I've got all of the style controls that I would expect to have inside a word processing document. One of the things I can do is I can embed a web video. So if I was to insert a web video, let's go to a page that has, well, let's add a page at the end just to show you what the process looks like. Let's add a text box page over here. It's right at the end. Let's insert a web video. And it asks me for a URL. Now I've got a URL here, which I saved before just for time, because you don't want to see me searching and typing. It looks up that URL. Here's my document. I click insert. And now I have a link to a YouTube video. So if I click on it, it should play. So this is just a text holder, sorry, this is a media holder, which is linked to the web page, and it has all of the attributes that I might expect to have. For example, at the moment, it's overwriting the text. So I'll just say, let's do a text wrap where it goes above and around. I can resize this, but I can shunt this around and I can lay out things the way that I want to insert them. And all of the things that I could normally expect to do, I can put placeholders, I can put text boxes, I can put images inside there, and I can even put gallery views. I don't know whether you guys have looked at the gallery views, but if I choose image gallery, it again makes a placeholder and I can drag multiple images. And once I place those images, if I double click on this, I can go through my individual images. They're inside here. I can resize them. I can crop them. But if I go to my gallery, here are my images that have been inserted into there. And if I wanted to put any more in there, all I have to do is just take those images. Let's take one of these guys, drag it into there. And I now have 4 images, as you can see by these 4 little dots. I can adjust each one individually. So if I double click on this, I can zoom in on this one or zoom out on that one without affecting the zoom levels of any of the other images. Okay, so I've pretty much generated my document over here. If I want to save this out as an ePub now, I choose export to ePub. And because I've taken a page layout document as opposed to a standard word processing document, you see over here it says layout. I can't choose between reflowable or fixed layout. If I had a normal word processing document, I could by default set it up as reflowable, but I could convert it to a fixed layout as well. So I can give it a title, I can create an author. At the moment, it's going to use the first page as my book cover. If I didn't want it to have a cover, I could say no book cover. Alternatively, if I hadn't designed my document with a book cover in mind, I could choose an image and I get this little pop-down menu and I could say, okay, I want you to use that image as my cover. But I have designed it with the cover in mind, so I'm going to use this one. If you're publishing it to something like the iBook store, if that was something that we could do from South Africa, I could give it a category so that when somebody was searching for it on the iBook store, if they search for fiction and literature, it would be put into the appropriate place. And additionally, not every ePub reader has, or not every computer has the fonts that I've designed so that it looks the way I intended it. So I can embed the fonts inside my document. I'll come to the table of contents in the next document, and I can make this as a 2-page or single-page document. So if I was to click next, I could export that out. I could choose where to do it, but rather than go through that process, I've already done that. So I'm just going to save that, and I'm going to go to my book reader. And here are all the books in my bookstore. I've got about 280 books here. Here are some of the ones that I was working on earlier. And what I've done is I've created a little special area over here where I have all of the documents that I was working on. So if I double click on this, I will open up that document and I now have an ePub. Now, if I click on the next page, here's the link to the video. If I click on that, video plays in situ. I can open it up in YouTube. I can go to the next one where I have my gallery, which you saw me do earlier. I can go to the next image. I can go to the next image and pretty much go through my document. This is pretty much my fixed format document. I cannot increase the font size. If I was to be able to do anything with this, it was really just to be able to look at my table of contents. I can jump around the document, but I'm kind of limited in what I can do. If I wanted to remember a page where I was at, I could bookmark the page. And once I bookmark the page, I'd be able to view it. But once again, this is also kind of limited when I'm inside the traditional ePub reader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that same document looks like now, but when it's on a, let's make sure we're open here, when it's on an iPad, which is typically what an ePub reader would be viewed at. Okay, so here's that same library on my iPad. So I'm going to tap on the gaining clock and open that up. And because it's synced via iCloud, it's kind of opened up on the page where I was previously. So I can swipe, I can open the video, I can go through my gallery by swiping through the various images. Now, if I was to press and hold on a word over here, I could copy it, I could speak it, I could tap look up. It would access the iPad's dictionary. If I wanted to search the web, I could do that by tapping on the search web button. And if I tapped on the page to bring my toolbar up at the top, I could increase the brightness of my screen, and I could also turn vertical scrolling on and off. If I turn vertical scrolling on and off, instead of swiping from left to right, I can go page by page, but you can see that the fidelity with the original document is absolutely identical, that there's no change. And if I was to take my iPad and rotate it horizontally, it doesn't reflow, nothing happens. Let's just turn off vertical scrolling. And now we're just going page by page by page, but it doesn't fill up the screen. It doesn't fill up the page. So this is behaving more like a PDF. Now, if I want more flexibility, what I would want to do is to open up a document which is much more like a traditional word processing document. So let's hide my reader over here. And this is a document that I made earlier, which uses the same text. But now the document is designed to be reflowed. So here's my document. I have all the tools that I had at my disposal previously. I could insert image galleries. I could insert web videos. I could make a link. So if I had some text highlighted, let's just say we took that text over there and I wanted to make a link. Add link. Yeah, add link to web page. So now I could say, okay, link that to www.digicape.co.za. I now have a hyperlink, and I can do this in the fixed format one as well, but just some of the things that I hadn't showed you already. So you've got all of your traditional word processing tools. Those of you who saw our pages lesson on table of contents, this will be very familiar to you. But over here, the way I generate my table of contents is I'm using a particular style. So if I was to add, for example, let's say I wanted to make a new chapter over here, I could insert a page break and then put the number 3, hit return, and I'm going to use chapter number as a style. And you can see over here, it's inserted. Actually, let's make that one 2, and I'll change this one to 3. I will export this one so you can see what I'm doing. And if I choose edit over here, you can see which styles it's using for the table of contents. Now, this is one of the beauties about styles is that you can choose a particular style. And if you use styles, you can say, okay, well, I just want the chapter numbers to denote the chapters. Now it's just going to use these. So let's export this. I'm going to export this now as an ePub, just like you saw before. But as you can see, because this is a page layout, this is a word processing document, not a page layout document, I have the option to export it as reflowable or as a fixed layout. Once again, I'm just going to make this fiction and literature. You've seen the table of contents. I've explained this a little bit more. You'll see it in practice. Let's just change the name to the gaining clock, new, so I can distinguish between the two. And the author was actually my late Uncle Gerald. So I'm going to put his name as the author. So let's export this to the desktop. Okay, hide you. And there's my new document. If I double click on this, it will now add this to my library on my Mac. And you can see my text again. At the moment, it has fidelity with the original document. But if I click here, now, because it's a reflowable document, I have some more options. If I prefer to view this in a particular typeface, I can view it in that typeface. If I go back to the original, I can view it that way. I can increase the font size. I can decrease the font size. I can change the background so that the document becomes more or less easy to read depending on my eyesight, or depending whether I'm an insomniac and I want to read in bed at night and not wake my wife up in particular. So let's switch back to the iPad to show you some of the additional features that we've got. So you'll see in my library, this is the new gaining clock. Let's just tap on it to download it. It's just been synchronized across from my Mac. So it should have some of the new stuff in there. There we go. Let's tap on that. So now, in a sense, it looks like the original, but there's a couple of additional things that we can do here. So let's just tap on the screen. And now if I tap on the A, like the version on my desktop, I can increase the font size. I can decrease the font size. I can choose different background colors and so on. But this is where it gets quite interesting. If I press and hold and drag down, it will start to highlight the text with my finger. If I tap on that text now, you can see that I've got a variety of different colors that I can highlight the text with. So if this is a textbook, or this is something that I just want to go through and mark up certain things, like there's some that I want to highlight, and because I want to differentiate some of the highlights that I make, I can choose different colors. So if I just want to take this person's name, I can highlight them. Let's make them in pink. And I can even take some text over here and I can underline it. Let's choose this and choose underline. And one of the other things that we can do is we can make notes, which is something that we can't do with the fixed format ones. So let's select some text over here and say, when the dishwasher sprang a leak, if I tap note, it makes it possible for me to type a note. And I said, perhaps you should have spent more money on the dishwasher. Okay, so now on the side of the page, actually you can't see it very well. It's just over here. The contrast that the software that I use to bring the iPad onto the screen, there's a bit of a bug on it. The contrast is a bit high. But if I tap on that, you'll see it opens up that note. So I've got little side notes over there, and this is limited only by the amount of memory that I've got on the device. Whereas if I have a typical book, my margins are limited unless I've got lots of post-it notes that may or may not fall out. But if I tap the table of contents in the top left-hand corner, you'll see on the right-hand side now, I've got chapters 1, 2, and 3, which it's taken from my table of contents, and I can jump straight back to that particular chapter. Oh, sorry, wrong one. I can go to chapter 2. So I can chapterize and jump directly to any one. But if I tap on notes over here, you can see that all the notes that I've made are reflected inside here. So I don't have to page through my document page by page to find out my notes. And all of these are hyperlinks. So if I tap on the yellow highlight, it takes me straight to that yellow highlight. So these are some of the really stunning tools that we've got that make it possible for somebody to be able to take our document and then to a certain extent make it their own. You know, if we were to have a link, I put a link in here somewhere, which would go to Digicape, but I'm not quite sure exactly where I put it. So that doesn't really matter. But one of the things that I could do, for example, is if I wanted to, let's say coronary arteries, if I select those words again and choose lookup, I've got the dictionary definition, but I could go to the web and I could say, okay, this is interesting. This is what I want. So this is some information about coronary arteries. I could select this text. I could copy it. I could go back to my document and I could make a note. Let's just actually highlight the entire thing, make a note, and I could paste that text inside there. So now, instead of being a static document, which a traditional printed book is, where the document doesn't change unless somebody republishes a new version of the book or makes changes to it. Now this book is not just a source of information which can give me branch points out to the internet. I can take that information from the internet and I can bring it back into my document. And then if it's a textbook, I can go back to here and I can review all of the information that I've made notes of. Tap on it, go back to it, read my notes and refer to my notes. In addition, it's not necessarily limited the same way it was previously. If I turn it this way, if I turn it into a portrait mode, I now have the entire document, but it's performing more like a traditional computer-based document. But the way it was designed at the moment with 2 columns makes this a little clumsy to read. So what I can do is if I go to my AA's up there and turn on vertical scrolling, this now turns it into more of a traditional document. So while it's retaining all the text styles, the format's now being overridden. I still have my notes. I still have my highlighting. I still have all the tools that I had. And if I'd inserted that YouTube video, it would have played in screen. But we now have a document that's more flexible and we're giving the viewer a slightly more control, more like a website where they can view the document, they can read it in the way that's better for them. So again, the fidelity of the document, the type of layout that you would choose, whether it was a fixed format or reflowable document, really depends on the amount of control that you want to give the end user as to how they interact with your document. So I hope I've given you some food for thought. I hope I've shown you some information that you might find useful. And I'm going to open up the floor to some questions. Yeah, Bernard.
So Alan, can you embed a keynote into your?
If you've got iBooks Author, you can embed a keynote presentation.
Using iBooks anymore because it's not supported, and you just export into ePub. Well, in your pages, you can embed a keynote, I assume.
No, you can't. But what you could do is you could export your keynote as a series of images, and then just put it into gallery view. And then the person could scroll through it slide by slide by slide. That would probably be one way of doing it.
The keynote could have voiceover and it could have music. You know, would that come through? That wouldn't come through, would it?
No, not if you export it as a series of images. Yeah, you know, this is the, you know, it's not really for me to speak for Apple, but I just, you know, this is what you could do with iBooks Author. But standards are standards, and they take a long time to move on. We're on what, HTML5 at the moment, and the web's been with us in public format since about 1993. So, you know, it's nigh on 20 years, and we're only on version 5 of HTML. So I think Apple have just decided, look, if we want people to be able to make ePubs that can be read by everybody, we will take pages and we'll rebuild it from there rather than having a separate application. But one of the other options you could do is, if you've got a keynote presentation, you could record that keynote presentation and export it as a movie file that would have the voiceovers and the presentation, and they could watch that way as if they were watching your presentation in real time and live. You know, and I'm sure you could. Having said that, we could probably come up with even better options. But those are just my immediate thoughts about how we could do that.
You saved a document in ePub, and then later on you opened it on your iPad in another app called Reflected.
No, it was the same app. When I double-clicked it on my Mac, it opened up in the Books app on my Mac. And because my books app on my iPad and my books app on my Mac are synced via iCloud, when I turn to my book software on my iPad, it already synced across. So all I had to do was just tap it and open it up.
So it was in your library in your iPad.
Yep, absolutely. Well, in my iBook, in the books app on the iPad.
I have two questions, please. Actually, just want to double check that I didn't misunderstood. Is if you is it better if you go to Pages and you choose a template, or is it better not to choose a template? Just wanted to double check on that.
There is no better. If you don't have particularly good design skills, then yes, by all means start with a template. But the distinction that I was making was that there are two types of templates, just as there are two types of document. There is a traditional word processing document, which is the same as a reflowable document. And then there's the landscape documents, which are your fixed format. Okay, so it really depends on, if you want to create a document, you might want to make a recipe book, for example. And I'm not saying that because you're a woman, please.
No. It's a very bad example. I'm so sorry.
No,
I don't have a kitchen in my room. I don't have a kitchen in my house.
Okay, I love cooking. Too many recipe books. If I wanted to make a recipe book, I might choose the fixed format layout because I may want to have the ingredients always stay next to the picture of the image. It really depends on what I want my end users to do. If you want them to be able to highlight, to be able to make notes inside the document, then I would always choose reflowable format, and that's the portrait mode. And then you can design it to look the way you want it to. But then they've got the choice to override that look.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you. And then the second one was, can anybody read the result? Or
yes,
only
the ePub format is a standard.
In Apple?
No. When I say standard, it's a worldwide standard. If you're designing a web page, you're not designing it to be read by people on a Mac. Microsoft might have wanted you to do that with Internet Explorer 6. They tried to reshape the internet so that documents could only be viewed if you used Internet Explorer, but that didn't work so well for them. The whole idea of a standard is that it can be viewed on any platform, irrespective of whether you're using a Mac, an Android, a Linux box, a Windows machine, whatever. If there's an ePub reader and it conforms to the ePub 3.2 standard, you should be able to view the movies, you should be able to watch the galleries, because those are the fundamental elements of the ePub 3.2 standard.
Okay, which means they need an ePub reader.
100%. That is one of the things. Just like if you've got a PDF on your computer, you need a PDF reader.
And is that a free ePub reader free?
Almost always, yeah. I don't think I've seen any paid for ones.
Thank you.
Maybe somebody has found out a way to make money making an ePub reader, but I haven't seen any.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Pleasure. Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks. I think actually Carolyn's covered the questions for me very nicely, but up until now, I've never actually I've never used it, or nor really even. I thought this was an electronic puppy that was going to come and poop on my keyboard. I actually had no idea what to expect, but it quickly fell into place. But so what you're telling me is that I can go out and do a recipe book. I can use this as a format. I can upload this to the internet, and people could technically buy it, or would it always be for free? Or could I sell it?
That's up to you. That's up to you. 100%.
I see.
Yeah.
And then
I think the point is that anybody can read it, irrespective of the platform.
Yes. Okay. I get it. Okay. So then once that's printed, and then I've got these options, I can either go, as you say, I could use Pages, or I could use ePubs, and then I've got an option, and then off I go.
No, we're using Pages as the authoring tool, and then we're generating an ePub from that.
I see.
The ePub is no longer editable now, but it has flexibility in terms of the way it's displayed on the screen. but you cannot edit the ePub. You can make notes on it depending on the layout and so on.
Right.
But you have an authoring tool, which Pages is the one we're using at the moment. iBooks Author will also generate ePubs. There are a number of third-party ones. There's a piece of software called Calibre, which I can't remember whether it's free or not, but that's an ePub generator. There's an authoring tool that I use sometimes called, not Scribble, Scriber. Gosh, I don't use it that often. But, you know, there are a lot of tools out there that will generate ePubs. It really depends on whether you're aiming it at the academic market or whether you just want to make a novel or whatever. And Pages is a beautiful all-purpose tool, and you guys have all got it already because you've got a Mac.
But no, absolutely amazing. I mean, I watch these things really not because I'm going to use all of these functions, but I'm just in awe of what you can do. It is quite remarkable.
I know you make newsletters and you often have issues with formatting. Maybe you might want to canvass your end users and saying, hey guys, how would you like to get a digital version?
No, it's not a bad idea.
And then you could embed videos, or you could make hyperlinks. It might open up a whole new avenue for you.
I'm going to explore that very one. A lovely idea. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, everybody, thank you so much once again for joining you. Lovely to joining us. Lovely to see you. And we'll see you. What's today? Tuesday. We'll see you on Thursday.
Thursday.
Thanks,
Alan.
so much. Bye.
Thank you all. Take care.